How you doing, Met fans? Welcome to another edition of the Terry Collins Show, presented by Tunnel of Towers, supporting America's greatest heroes. Donate just $11 per month by going to t2t.org. That's T2T.org. I'm John Arezzi. Another week in the books, and the Mets are back home after a 3-4 road trip, splitting a 4th of July weekend series against the league-leading Atlanta Braves, and losing 2-3 to Toronto Blue Jays. This is all last week before the All-Star break coming up. The season now more than halfway over, and the focus now on the upcoming trade deadline. And there are even more questions about the internal relationship between the two biggest stars on the Mets, Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor. We will get the opinions of two of the insiders covering the team. Liz Benn will join us with Laura Albanese, so let's get right to that leadoff with Liz and Laura. We welcome back to the Terry Collins Show two of our favorite insiders returning to the show back from an amazing experience overseas. We say hi to the former director of baseball operations for the Mets at TSN Canada and SNY analyst Liz Benn, and also back, she's the Mets beat writer and columnist for Newsday, also an SNY analyst and co-host of the popular first-time listener, long-time caller podcast, Laura Albanese. Liz and Laura, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Good to be back.
Always a pleasure. Liz, I want to start off with you because you just returned to the States from what seemed to be a pretty amazing trip overseas. So before we get into the bizarro world of the New York Mets, let's talk about your experiences with your recent trip. What brought you over there? And talk to us about this experience for you.
Yeah, it was great. And it was fun to do some baseball that, we don't see written about in the media and, speculating about Mets rumors and everything for a while. So I ended up going to London for a little while. The Women's Baseball World Cup is coming up in a year or two. But before that, there's a qualifier. And so the team from Great Britain has won the European qualifier. And so then they had an exhibition series over at their complex just outside of London. So the Czech team was there. And then we brought over two high school girls baseball teams through Baseball for All, a girls baseball nonprofit here in the US. And we played a bunch of exhibition games against them. And I got to manage one of the teams, which was a lot of fun. It was a great development opportunity for the younger players who I had on my team. But then getting, the experience of having them play against an international national team through Great Britain. I mean, that was an incredible experience for them. But it was interesting, too, because London, England does not have a ton of baseball. And so some of the girls on my team who are maybe 14, 15 years old may actually have more playing experience than the national team members in England or Great Britain. So it's kind of a fun matchup to see kind of the personal maturity versus baseball experience. But it was such a wonderful experience. Everybody had a great time. And, we wish Great Britain good luck in their qualifier. And I believe it's Taiwan in August.
Wow. That's amazing. And you did get a chance to travel a little bit and, enjoy yourself there as well, right? Nice vacation for you as well.
Yeah, afterwards, after leaving London, I was able to go to Corfu in Greece for a few days and then Bordeaux in Paris. It's kind of this crazy luxury I have now of not being in a front office where I can actually do a summer vacation, which I never had before in my life. So that was actually pretty nice to travel as normal people do in the summer instead of waiting till a shoulder season to do so. So it was beautiful. It was a good kind of reset. And it was always fun checking in on Twitter or X on what was going on with the Mets at that time.
Yeah, the Mets. Those Mets. I don't even know where to start. I had a bunch of notes yesterday, and I'm like, I watched last night's game, and Laura, you weren't there for that, and I don't think, Liz, you were there. I don't know if you've seen it on TV or I didn't even watch it, but it was one of the most bizarre games I've ever seen, and it was part of the bizarro season the Mets are having. I really kind of interpreted it last night as a dance of the fascinating, infuriating, and the absurd. I mean, right from the get-go, a Little League home run, 3 errors in one play. And then you have another Soto blast. You have A.J. Ewing hitting, 4 hits, and you had this positive. The Mets just couldn't hold the lead. They kept coughing up the lead. Senga unperformed again, but it was one of the most bizarre games, like I said, I'd ever witnessed. Laura, I don't think you've seen it, or did you watch it? Do you have any thoughts from what we all experienced last night in this bizarre world that we're living in?
I mean, I did not watch it because I was on my way back from Atlanta.
Lucky.
I did read the recaps, and I think the one thing that you can point out is you leave Atlanta winning the last 2 games, and there's this sense we asked Andy Green about it after, but they were an ugly 2 wins. Oof. And he was like, "Oh, we're gonna look at the positive." But you saw how those 2 wins actually influenced the game against Kansas City, because they had to tax their bullpen as much as they did. They had to use Kodai Senga on short rest. They had to put this poor kid, Matt Seelinger, making his MLB debut in a fairly untenable situation. And then you see all the defensive miscues, the errors that we saw in Atlanta continuing against Kansas City. So all of this tells the kind of the tale of the season. It has just completely snowballed, so that even when I wrote something the other day, it's like wins are not enjoyed. It's like wins are endured. And that's what you're seeing with the Mets. Even when things are going well, somehow it ends up with things going poorly. And they went super poorly yesterday.
Yeah. That's the sense that I had too with the games in Atlanta. It kind of just reminded me of that painful season in 2023 when every time we won a game, it was like, okay, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the turning point. But then also we would win games that we probably shouldn't have won based on kind of the quality of play. And that just seemed to be how the Atlanta games went. And yesterday, it was just a farce of sorts. I mean, when I saw the Little League home run, I was like, okay, the Mets are going to win a game and maybe they're going to actually be able to breathe and feel okay and comfortable. And that is not how it went. And I think that's something I always find fascinating too, is when there's kind of odd things that happen against former Mets. And so seeing Seth Lugo in there, I think that just, it almost added to the whole oddity of the whole thing. And even Carrasco the other day with Atlanta, it feels weird when there's the former Mets pitching in there as well, who are contributing to the oddities of these games.
Yeah, and Dom Smith.
Yeah, I was going to say my exact phrase was, Cookie Carrasco's here? I was like, oh, okay.
It's crazy. It really was. And last night, also, we got an opportunity to see a Major League Baseball record being tied when the Royals right fielder, Tyler Tolbert, who I never even heard about before, he comes up, and young guy, but he gets 5 hits in the game last night consecutively, and combine that with 5 hits consecutively the day before and 2 the day before that. So lo and behold, you get 12 consecutive hits, and it's only happened 5 times in modern day. He joins the likes of Pinky Higgins, who did it in 1938, Johnny Kling in 1902, and Walt Dropo in 1952 by achieving it in 12 straight plate appearances. And I have to admit, I was rooting for him to get that number 13. And I was very disappointed when he didn't break the record. So
at that point, you have to root for it. But also, those are great old school baseball names.
They really are.
In baseball.
Just when I looked at the names, I was like, well, yeah, Pinky Higgins,
Obviously, Pinky Higgins. Got my Pinky Higgins jersey right in the closet right now.
Yeah. But yeah, it was crazy last night. And the thing that broke my heart more than anything, the loss is the loss. And we'll get to Atlanta, because even though they won 2 games there, split the series, those 2 wins infuriated me. Just how it happened. Like at the end of the game, you win, you're supposed to be, all right, yeah, we won. But it's like, oh.
Yeah.
It just tears you up. It's crazy. But last night saw the Major League debut of what was and should have been a feel-good story. Local kid, Farmingdale College, I believe. It's from Westbury, 31 years old, Matt Seelinger. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And He was traded to the Mets from the Tigers on Sunday for cash considerations, whatever that amount may be. And he was toiling in the minors for 9 years. And he gets the opportunity, and he had some type of weird contract. I don't know if you guys can clarify it. It was like 72 hours he had to be on the major league roster. Can you explain what that was before we get into his performance last night?
So he has an upward mobility clause in his contract. So the Tigers, when the Mets acquired him, they either had 72 hours to put him on the 40-man roster, or they can make him available to other teams. So when he came here, it was really, I mean, obviously you're not gonna make space for someone on the 40-man roster unless you intend to use them fairly soon. So it was pretty clear that he was kind of being earmarked to be used at some point in the future. And then, that was his MLB debut. He went to Farmingdale State. He's one of the very few people to be drafted out of Farmingdale State. It was a feel-good story. He had like all of his family there, and Andy Green had to put him into that tie game, and then he had to let him wear it. And it's kind of, it is kind of heartbreaking. I mean, you wait your entire life, you have all your family and friends there, and you're just kind of stuck in this position, and you can't really get out of it. And the play around you is abysmal. And what are you supposed to do if you're Matt Seelinger?
Yeah,
it's one of those situations where you just really hope that he gets a bunch of other chances, so that eventually becomes kind of a funny debut story, but it's kind of a long way off from becoming that. So it's just really, I feel really bad for the guy. I mean, that's really tough, especially doing it for your hometown team.
Yeah, because I've been reading about him over the last few days when they signed him. And Laura, you had the announcement in Newsday that they did sign him, and a little bit of his backstory. And then there was a feature written by one of your contemporaries at Newsday, a really long feature on him. And for me, I watched his pregame, how excited he was to be there, and all that energy, and this is his opportunity. And he was asked, like, you have any friends and family? He goes, all of Long Island is coming. So obviously the contingent of people that were there supporting him was pretty large, and that really was a heartbreaker to see. He's not a kid; he's 31 years old,
right? But that almost makes it worse. It's like you wait your entire life to do this.
Regardless, all the players that I've spoken to after making their major league debut and kind of asking them, what did it feel like? How did it feel? Very few of them are actually just like, it was another game. I don't think I've ever heard that from anybody. There's always nerve. Some of them have said, I was shaking the whole time through the entire game. That first one kind of just needs to get out of the way too, in order for it to feel more natural and like baseball again. So I just think all the situations kind of being thrown on him and that he was put in at once, it just adds to it in a disappointing way for him personally. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, his contract, does he get paid? He's got a major league contract. He's in the major leagues. Now, do you know any of the terms? Is it for the rest of the year? Does he get paid differently if they bring him to Syracuse? So I would love to see the kid he's not even a kid, but I like to see him get compensated for like what he had to endure last night, when to me he was a sacrificial lamb when I seen him walking out there, and I was like, why do they have to put him in? The game is tied. It's a high pressure situation. He's been waiting all his life for this. He's toiled in the minor leagues for 9 years. He's a local kid. Why are you sacrificing him? Why? And then what broke my heart even more, because obviously he imploded, 7 runs. He gets back to the dugout, and he's out of breath. I think he threw him almost 50 pitches or 40 something pitches in that 7th inning, and he's, to every man in the dugout, he's saying, my bad, my bad. He's going up to every person, and I'm like, this is heartbreaking for me. And then he goes out and pitches the 8th, and he was fortunate he allowed 0 runs, so that was a little consolation. But I just felt like, I hope they don't misuse this guy, and I hope they don't release him or DFA him today, or he deserves another chance, I think, in a much maybe lower leverage situation. But that's a human element. That's not analytics. So I like to get your thoughts on where he goes from here.
My worry is that they kept him in so that he would be the guy optioned to AAA, and then they bring up a fresh arm today. But you hope that he stays in the system and he becomes an option in Syracuse. I mean, looking at his numbers, I mean, he's a pretty high strikeout guy in the minors. So you want to see that translate to the majors. I think that he, if the Mets claimed him, so he was on waivers and they ended up grabbing him for cash considerations. And so that does mean that there was an assumption that other teams would be interested and that he wouldn't clear waivers. And so the Mets actually had to pay that cash for him. And so it kind of puts him up a level or a tick above a typical waiver claim. And so they do see something there. So I don't expect them to get rid of him right away. If we see him option to Syracuse today, I think I'm not going to be surprised, but I do think that they would intend to keep him on the roster and see what they can get out of him.
Yeah, I kind of like, I agree with Liz with that. And he was actually extremely impressive when he played with the Long Island Ducks in 2024.
He had an ERA under 1, didn't he?
0.44 ERA. That's what attracted the Tigers again and, gave him another shot. Prior to that, he had only, I think, pitched a couple games at AAA his entire career. So this is the first time in his career at the age of 30 that he's had like stability at the higher levels of minor league baseball. So it'll be interesting to see. And he did pretty well in AAA so far this season, around a 3.5 ERA. The Mets are going to need relievers. They're going to need warm bodies. If this guy can get people out, I think he'll stay in the system.
And with the trade deadline coming up and assuming that the Mets are going to trade several relievers, this is a guy who you want to bullpen for the remainder of the season.
Well, I hope not just because he's a local Long Island guy and I'm from Long Island. And, there was something about his story that resonated with me. And, and to see his emotion and to see him apologizing to all his teammates, because he obviously wanted to make a good first impression, but he was put in a situation which was very difficult last night. Also last night, Kodai Senga was back out there, and he's got too many pitches. He's got too many pitches. He's so infuriating because there are some moments of dazzling artistry on the mound, but then most of the time he's given it up. And like, how long can this team continue with him? I mean, don't they have to make a decision on Kodai Senga really soon? I mean, how long can you go with this guy, really?
I think that's something that I've been kind of a Kodai Senga fan because I think I just was so close to what he did in 2023, and you still see flashes of that. I'm a little concerned at this point about maybe some information overload for him. There's so much kind of bouncing back and forth with his approaches when he's pitching. And really, when I took a look at kind of how he's using his pitches, he's almost matched his pitch usage to 2023. And so while it changed over the last few years, he's actually, it seems like, trying to go back to that. The difference, though, is that the characteristics of the pitches are different. So they all have a little bit more vertical kind of lift on them. And that is contributing to the fly balls. He had a much higher ground ball rate back then because they were kind of at a lower vertical plane. And so I think that right now, if he's sticking to that pitch breakdown, that pitch usage, which I think is a good idea, because I think that the ghost fork and everything were used in a really smart way at that point. All the pitches were deployed very, very well. There just has to be something done, and it's way easier said than done, about getting those characteristics better so that you are getting less vertical rise on the pitches and kind of keeping it more kind of at a plateau from kind of like that 0 to 2 inch rise right now. I mean, some of them are going up double or triple that. And that would help a lot with the ground balls, also strikeouts. And so the home runs are going to be kept at bay. So I think that that's kind of the big thing that I would like to see. Again, how do we do that? I don't know. That's up to the pitching coaches and Senga's feel, especially after having several injuries that definitely affected his mechanics and his just overall feel in pitching. But that's kind of, I think, what the solve would be. Can he implement that solve? I'm not sure. And also, I'm not sure if he can do that with this Mets team when he's tried out so many different things over several years with them. Maybe he does need kind of a fresh start elsewhere.
Yeah, and kind of speaking to a little bit to that, it was interesting after the outing prior to this last one yesterday. He spoke to the media, and that had been a successful outing. And he did talk a little bit about feeling freer, and he felt like he was overthinking in past outings. And I do, when you mention all those things, you do see an element of that. And now he's saying it. The idea that maybe he is overthinking the process, and that is affecting his mechanics and his ability to produce because he is a little bit in his own head. So I had asked him at one point, you talk about your mechanics. At what part is there part of this that's psychological? And he said that, especially when it comes to the walks, it's entirely possible. So, we talk about the yips or whatever else. I don't think Kodai Senga is quite at yip level. But I do think that there is a mental element that is affecting his mechanics and his ability to have consistent outings. And then add to that, the pitching on 3 days rest for the first time in his career, the yo-yoing back and forth from the bullpen to a starting position. Frankly, I think the middle relief role was not a terrible idea, especially when the fastball and the ghost fork are working well, because he can kind of simplify his pitch mix a little bit more and rely a little bit more on things that are effective.
When you have like 6 or 7 pitches in your repertoire, and the ones that are most effective are the ghost fork and the heater, he looks to me like he just overthinks so much, and he's probably getting so much information from so many people. And what I love when we talk about him with Terry, Terry's always like, well, he used to pitch 200 pitches in between starts in Japan. They should just let him do what he did over there, So, which is, an old school guy saying something from the heart, but I think there could be some relevance to that. I mean, he obviously made it here, and he had a fantastic beginning with the team, and you could see the frustration from him, and I wish that he could turn it around, but maybe a fresh start somewhere else would be good for him, but who knows what's going to happen. It also seems
like we see changes game to game, but also within the game. I think that I'm actually kind of surprised that you see so much frustration on his face when he does kind of walk somebody or give up a home run. So I just think that the adaptability and ability to overcome kind of those mistakes within a game, that to me screams information overload and like, okay, this thing that I planned to do didn't work, or maybe I didn't execute it. So how do I need to adjust for the next batter or something, rather than just kind of trusting the flow, trusting the pregame process, and going with that. So it's not even just game to game. I think that within the game, I'm seeing a little bit of hesitations at times, or more like emotion than you're used to seeing from him or other pitchers typically.
Let's talk about Andy Green. Andy's been in the manager seat now, interim manager seat for a couple of weeks now, just about a couple of weeks. And what's the difference that you've noticed so far between his style maybe with Mendoza's style, and how the players are adapting to him, because he was really front office, head of baseball ops? And Liz, if you can expound and him at all, and give us any insight into his personality. But Laura first, because you're in the clubhouse every day, and then Liz, what have you noticed about Andy Green and his style and his relations with the media? And just give us a little synopsis of what you've seen in 2 weeks.
I mean, I do think it's a little bit early, and the Andy Green era so far has been marked by a whole lot of loss. So we're still kind of trying to suss out the situation. We talked a little bit about this last week. The idea when he did his introductory press conference of him basically saying, okay, I am really an interim manager. I do think that affects a little bit the way that he goes about things. He's just trying to keep this team afloat. I mean, it's a little bit of a substitute teacher vibe going into this, and which is completely understandable. I haven't seen him interact too much with the players, but then again, most managers aren't really, they're not in the clubhouse when the media is there, Yeah. So, I mean, these are relationships that I'm not really that privy to. They're getting to know him. He's getting to know them. Other than the kids, he's obviously been around AJ Ewing a lot. He's been around Carson Bent a lot. He's been around Christian Scott a lot, and they seem to really like him and understand him. I do like that aspect of it. Carlos Mendoza had a player development background. Andy Green, obviously, player development background. And right now, this season is about fostering those young kids and having a familiar face in that role, and one that was clearly very adept in the development aspect of player relations. I think is probably helpful. I'd like to say something about his bullpen management or whatever else, but the fact of the matter is, if your name isn't Luke Weaver, you're not really doing a whole lot of anything right now. So he's kind of in a bind, and it's hard to really know what his managerial style is when the Mets are simply not performing to their level.
Yeah, I truly believe that Mendoza was let go in a way where he wasn't set up for success this season with the roster that he was given, and Andy Green has the same roster. And so I don't think that it's going to be a quick switch. I'm kind of curious if after the All-Star break, maybe he'll have a little bit more bandwidth to be able to implement some of his own managerial style, maybe. I kind of get the sense that right now it's just get to the All-Star break and then kind of take a breath and reset. But when my last year with the Mets, he was hired as the farm director, VP of player development, and I really liked him. Him and I spoke quite a bit. He was, all over the country, following the minor league teams and everything, but he was in New York a decent amount too. And just talking through different situations in game with him, I really appreciated. We'd be in the front office box and something odd would happen on the field, and I would ask him about it because he does have that managerial and bench coach experience too. And something that I really appreciate about him, which I don't think you always see with people in baseball, is that he's very open to admitting areas where he needed to grow previously in his career. So as a manager previously, he acknowledged kind of the mistakes he made and the things that he learned and the changes he wanted to make. So I thought that was really impressive that he was so open about it and critical about it. So I think that you're going to see that here. I really like that the fact that the person who is in charge of player development is now in the major league position where he has all those guys who he just led the development for in the major leagues, because it adds a level of continuity that never happens in baseball. So for the outfielders, for example, it's nice that they get that same continuity. And then I would expect that later in the season, again, after trade deadline, maybe you'll see Tom coming up a bit more. Andy would have also helped to supervise Christian Scott's rehab, and so he was involved in that. So I just think that level of continuity is going to be really beneficial for the younger players. As for the actual season, I don't think that anybody is expecting the Mets to make a crazy run. I don't think that this roster is really going to do that. So I would kind of look at those smaller things and those opportunities for development long term, rather than the immediate success in the wins and losses every single day.
Yeah.
The draft is coming up too. And Liz, can you give us any insight in your experiences back in the day? What the team is doing right now to prepare for this draft and what they may be looking at, and how does that whole process develop? I mean, when you come to the annual draft.
Yeah, it's a very hefty process. And because I was involved in the major league operations, I was aware of everything going on, and I was in the draft meetings leading up to the draft itself. But there have already been, I'm sure, a few different draft meetings where the area scouts, the regional scouts, the cross-checkers, and Chris Gross, who's ultimately leading the draft, are meeting and kind of figuring out their board. But there are so many meetings because there's so many players that you're considering, and the amount of data that's available is also really, really broad. And so Chris Gross he'll be leading the strategy there. Pro player personnel will be involved as well. But it's an overload of information. I think that if a fan kind of saw what was going on in those draft rooms, they'd have no idea. They'd never criticize kind of draft picks ever again, I don't think, because it's so difficult to get through that. But generally what you're doing too, and I think that some of the commentary I often see after the draft is, why are the Mets drafting another shortstop? Why would they do that? They need a first baseman right now. But that's not how the draft works. The draft is that you pick the guy with the highest potential player value, regardless of what position that is. Sometimes it could get to a point where you see, okay, we're drafting all shortstops, and there isn't enough playing time for all of them in the minor leagues to get the reps and development that they need. But that's not a problem that comes up often. So usually you just see, okay, let's just get the best possible players, because they're not all going to come up with the Mets. They're going to be trading pieces in the future. And you also don't know what's going to hit and what's not. So when you see kind of an odd selection of positions being chosen in the draft, that is what teams are supposed to do.
I actually wouldn't be surprised that that's also the Mets trade deadline strategy when they're trying to get prospects, which is basically just like get the best available and we'll figure it out along the way. Because at this point, I mean, there are so many variables, and so many of these kids, these prospects that they're probably going to get are probably pretty far away from actually making it to the major league level. So just get whatever the best package you possibly can.
Yeah. What date is the draft this year? Do you know? Off the top of your head? It's coming up, though, right? Isn't it coming up in the next week or so?
Is it the same as Home Run Derby Day?
I believe it is, or
okay.
Did they do it the day before?
The day before. Yeah, so that's this weekend.
And then continues.
One minute. Let me. I can look that up right now. What day is the MLB Draft? It is Saturday, July 11th, and Sunday, July 12th.
There you go. It's coming up. So This is probably not a moot point now, but do teams in Major League Baseball, can they trade players for future draft picks like they can in other sports? Is that something that doesn't happen in baseball?
No, that is not allowed.
Not allowed. Okay.
And also, there's also restrictions around when you can actually trade somebody that you drafted. There has to be kind of a certain amount of time that needs to pass before you can actually trade the player, or else you're kind of allowing a backdoor trading draft pick situation.
Yeah. Well, the Mets need a good draft this year. And it looks like next year they'll have a better one. They'll have higher picks next year, it looks like. Depends on what happens. There's so much out there.
Lottery.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. But the All-Star game is coming up, then the trade deadline, and I do want to get your viewpoints on this upcoming deadline, because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of movement. There'll be a lot, maybe there'll be some surprises, some that we kind of anticipate. So let's get Laura, then Liz. What do you think is the most probable players to be moved?
I mean, Freddie Peralta is an obvious one, but I mean, the people are always going to look for pitching help. So you can probably pretty much say goodbye to AJ Minter and Brooks Raley, I think. Luke Weaver, you could probably get a good amount for him. You just have to weigh whether or not, he is a bargain. You have him for one more year. He can pitch in high leverage situations. If you think, which I do think there's going to be baseball next year. If you think there's going to be baseball next year, do you hold on to him? It depends on what type of package is provided for him. Huascar Brazaban, he's under team control for I think like 3 more years, but it's possible. Like these are the guys that are going to get you some, a tidy little package.
Yeah, because the strengths of the team right now is the bullpen.
And so I think Freddie Peralta's market is somebody's going to want Freddie Peralta. How much they get for Freddie Peralta, maybe, dependent on how many starting pitchers are available at the deadline, most likely, but also like a guy like Tariq Skubal, are the Tigers going to move him? I think that's going to be a factor here. Honestly, if it's not nailed to the floor, or your name isn't like Noel McLean, AJ Ewing, Carson Bench, I think that Juan Soto, the Mets are going to listen. We're definitely heading into fire sale territory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Brooks Raley, I'm just fascinated to see what happens there, because there's also always a shortage of really good lefties at the deadline. Being in the deadline rooms, there's times where you just think, okay, we need a lefty, and you look at what's available and you think, do we really want to pay that much for this guy who's really not that great, but I guess he's the best lefty out there?
Yeah.
So Brooks Raley, with the year that he's having, I mean, he should get a pretty good package back. Again, I think that pretty much anybody in the bullpen is available. Because they're also just kind of common ones to move, and also you can move them later in the deadline process too. A lot of them don't move until kind of the end of the deadline. I agree. Peralta will probably move. Again, I'm really fascinated to see what the yield is for him, because we keep talking about how he's not going very deep in games. The pitch characteristics are not great right now. He's not really hitting his spots or executing according to plan. So how much is that actually going to affect what they get back for him? Do teams actually see that as a real problem, or do they see that as, okay, we can easily fix that? But I think they're listening on pretty much everybody except that group that Laura mentioned, those young guys. And I think that they should. Again, we don't really know what's going to happen next year, whether there's baseball or not, how much baseball there is next year. I think that the smartest decision would be to sell most guys who you don't have several years of control over, and get back, again, the best prospects possible, and really not targeting ever like those exchanges where somebody has a year or two more of control as a return. I would not go for those guys, because again, you don't know what's going to happen next year. You should be building for the future around those guys like Ewan and Bench, who you have for another 5+ potentially plus years. But the deadline, the conversations, I'm sure, are definitely starting. Another really kind of fun game with the deadline is deciding, do you want to be one of the first ones to sell, or do you want to wait to see how the market is establishing itself? Because you could get away with a really interesting deal at the start of it if teams think that they're maybe getting a good return based on what's out there in the market. Or do you want the market to establish itself and see how much the overpays are going for, and then capitalize on that? So that's always an interesting thing to see, and what I'll be monitoring over the next few weeks.
It'll be a fascinating second half of July for sure as we go up to that trade deadline of August the 3rd. There's one name that when you're listening to as much talk radio as I do, I mean, and podcast, and when you hear Francisco Lindor's name brought up these days, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of speculation. Steve Cohen seemed to open the door to more speculation recently when he was with on the podcast The Show. And when he mentioned that there were some problems last year that are corrected this year between Soto and Lindor. So that kind of like reignited, the rumor mill and the speculation on what's actually going on between these two. And now when you have guys like Boomer Esiason saying Lindor's got to go, when you hear like a Mike Francesa say the Mets are trying to trade Lindor, it's just kind of like no one really knows what happened last year, and no one really knows what's going on this year. I mean, it's really it's internal for a reason. But the speculation is out there now. And when I look at Lindor, and I know he's had the injuries this year, he doesn't look like the same guy. I mean, his enthusiasm level is lower. He kind of looks, and this is just a fan observing. I'm not saying I'm an inside reporter like you guys are, but he looks kind of like out of place a little bit on the team. And it could be his struggles. He's not hitting well. His defense doesn't look as sharp as it has, and he's coming back from injury. But it also seems to be like it's been a different guy since Steve Cohen even announced in spring training that as long as I'm here, there's not going to be a captain. So I want to get your observations on Lindor. Is there a chance that he may be moved? What's going on? Have you heard anything? And just your assessment on what's going on with Lindor right now. And is there too much speculation and rumors out there that's fueling this fire constantly? I
think it would be difficult to move Lindor. I mean, I honestly, I don't know that the captaincy has had as much of a negative effect on him as last year did. I think he's disappointed in himself. I think he's disappointed in what the team was failed to accomplish last year. I think he's disappointed. This is a guy who prides himself on playing 162. He's disappointed in the fact that he got injured. He's disappointed that the season is over before it even started. And I think when you are surrounded by loss, it can affect you psychologically. It can affect your play. We've seen him making a lot of mental mistakes. But in addition to that, he's getting older. And as you get older, especially the position that he plays, he's not necessarily always making the plays that we are used to seeing Francisco Lindor make. You add to that the fact that he's not really hitting. And anybody who's been successful for their entire career, that's gonna take its toll. And he's right now, they're human beings. He's adjusting to a new reality, and it's kind of a dark reality. And it's been a dark reality since June of last year.
Yeah. I think that the injury that's affecting him. He just lost a big chunk of the season, and when he came back, the Mets were done for the season, and that's going to affect you. But I have not been around him in a couple of years, but I was around him for 3 years, and I cannot praise him enough. I think that one of the most common questions I get from fans or friends when I'm talking to them is Lindor really, is he really like that? I'm like, yeah, he's actually even better and an even greater person than you think he is. I do think that he takes on a lot for the team. The one thing that I saw from him that I didn't like recently was that when Andrew Green was taking out Sean Manaea, he was like, no, in the field. I didn't like that. So that is him taking on too much, but also not really showing respect for Andy Green right away. So I didn't like that. But I do think that it follows from him taking on so much for the team. And a personal anecdote that I think is pretty remarkable is that when you're in the clubhouse, it is the players' space. The players are the focus. That is how it's supposed to be. There was no debating that. I remember during the 2023 trade deadline, and we were getting rid of everybody, and it was a pretty horrible experience for everybody involved. I had to go down to the clubhouse for something, and he saw me, and he was like, "Hey, Liz, how are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm good. How are you doing?" And he was like, "No, how are you dealing with this? Because he saw me, I was in the clubhouse every day dealing with, whether it was injuries, roster moves, whatever. And he, took on kind of this responsibility for like, I hope this person in the front office is doing okay, going through this horrible situation. And so I think that just shows the type of person he is, that one, he actually genuinely cares about everybody he's around, including the front office person, but cares so much about kind of the team and the ball club as a whole, that he's thinking about those things too. And I do think that I found at times that it's a little disappointing that he can't just be a player and focus on just playing. There's been so much put on him from, I don't think really necessarily other players, but media and fans a lot, with the kind of the captain conversation for years and years and years, and talking about how he's the leader of the clubhouse. It puts a lot on him, and he already takes on a lot of that on his own. So I think it's just, I'm really disappointed to see kind of the fans attacking him at this point and saying, get rid of him, because he is a very unique player who you want to have in your clubhouse. And I hope that he doesn't leave, because I think that he will also be a tremendous resource for those younger players coming up, and those guys like Benn, Ewing, all of them. Even pitchers go to him when they're younger and coming up for the first time. So I have nothing but wonderful things to say about him. I just wish that at times he could just be a player, a bit more than being the guy in the clubhouse.
I really appreciate that insight. That gives us a little bit of a little backstory on him, and look what 2 years ago was. I mean, he was the heart, the soul, with a number of other guys, but his play, it was a magical season, and I can't believe that in 2 years we're in this situation right now. It's crazy to think. Finally, I want to talk about Bo Bichette, because obviously Bo is also finally, starting to hit. Things are starting to go his way. His defense has been great. Laura, I know that you wanted to talk about Bo as well and how the progress he's making. And then Liz, of course, you know him well, and you actually covered his return from the Canadian viewpoint. So, Laura, first on Bo Bichette. My question is, what are the odds that he would actually stay another season? But let's get your assessment on Bo.
I mean, I think it's possible. I think it's going to be difficult for someone, especially with the slow start that he had, to go over the $42 million that the Mets offer him. This is also a player with a lot of pride.
Yes.
And, he comes from Toronto. He's in this new situation. And it was always going to take time for him to acclimate. It is such a different environment. You have an entirely new coaching staff. You have new teammates. Yeah, he had Marcus Semien, but it was going to take a minute. And then you go and you're hitting balls hard, but they're not falling in. You're starting to hear boos. You're starting to hear taunts. You're starting to hear all these things. And it kind of it starts to weigh on you. In addition to that, you're playing a new position. One of the things that has really, really, was interesting, I had written about it. I feel like Met fans might have been confused when they saw like everybody just in Toronto, like universally embrace Bo. I mean, because generally speaking, a guy chooses to take his quote unquote payday. Sometimes the return when he comes back home is not necessarily like with open arms, but that's not the case. He is absolutely loved in Toronto. He's loved by his teammates. And so I think that definitely, and I've been, that definitely indicated to me that maybe, Met fans have not necessarily been exposed to the Bo Bichette that the people of Toronto know. And then you look at, kind of the bona fides. He's hitting, the balls are falling in now. But he also has done absolutely everything the Mets have asked, and he's never once stuttered about it. He suits up every day, play third base. Principal Lindor gets hurt, move to shortstop. Oh, we need a second base. Oh, throw Bo Bichette in there. And I think that's fascinating, because when a guy is struggling offensively and still willing to take on the added mental load of switching positions, knowing that it could potentially have a negative impact on his offense, I think that's a fairly admirable trait. So do I think that eventually, we're going to see Bo Bichette play to the back of a baseball card? Yeah, he's hitting 350 over the last month. Yes. And I think he's a valuable asset for that franchise.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's such a huge shift to be somewhere for a decade and your entire professional career, and then all of a sudden you're flipped to another team. There are certain expectations, and then nobody on the team is actually meeting those expectations. It's kind of not what he signed up for. Not that you get to choose to be on a World Series team, but it's a really tough thing to deal with mentally, all that change, and then also kind of dealing with so much failure at the same time. But As Laura said, like the last month, he's been looking like Bo Bichette. This month, he has 2 strikeouts. 2. That's it's nothing. So it's, he's performing. I think the next step is to get maybe a little bit more power from him. He had 5 home runs last month, but this month I don't think he has anything above a single. Maybe he has a double. But getting that power back. But he's hitting well. He's hitting properly again the way that we expected him to. I think that the conversation about is Bo Bichette a Met after the trade deadline, that's fascinating because it seems to just go back and forth constantly. Mm-hmm. It's a really hard contract to take on. And of course, Steve Cohen would definitely pay it down in order to get the right prospects back because he considers that money already spent. He said that a couple of years ago, but he's proving his value. I think that if I looked in a crystal ball and had it right, I would think that he stays a Met this year and next year because it's a really hard deal to opt out of. And I think that he's also probably going to bet on himself to show that he is still Bo Bichette, the Bo Bichette of Toronto, and try to get a longer term deal after that. But I also kind of wonder, he's had such a hard time this year, and like the fans have been not great to him. There's conversations every day about how this is one of the worst contracts. Like it's terrible, and that's all getting to him, I'm sure. And then after he goes to Toronto, he sees, oh no, I'm still Bo Bichette. This whole country still loves me. He's there on Canada Day. I mean, it's this whole kind of like big open arm welcome back. And so I'm hoping that also instilled kind of that just positive messaging to him again of like, no, I'm still that guy. I have not turned into kind of this guy who's just fallen off after free agency. So I think that that's probably sticking with him based on the way that he's played the last month or so.
Maybe being back in Toronto also kind of, even though it was sad for him, but to see how much he's still adored, and the fact, Laura, you brought up on our last show, the souvenir shops, the team stores are still robustly selling Bo Bichette jerseys. That maybe that's like, I am still Bo Bichette. And I personally hope he stays, because I think that if he has a competitive team that's constructed in a way where you have the nucleus of Soto and Bichette and Lindor back, and a couple of added pieces, and maybe a good first baseman will come our way somewhere.
A first baseman, what a novel concept.
Where, the former first baseman, just celebrated his 500th consecutive game played, and he's not doing too bad in offense and defense.
Nope. Could have called that one.
I can't wait to September 14th when Citi Field could be sold out and everyone's wearing Alonso jerseys. So, that was not going to help whether they won or lost this year, but it's still this glaring, we need a first baseman, and we had one, So anyway, I hope Bo stays.
That's not the solution.
Yeah, I hope Bo stays because I really have, I talk about it a lot here. I've been a fan of his for years, and I think that we've seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Bo Bichette. So, and I think the fans, maybe their eyes were opened a little bit to see the response that he got in Toronto when he got home was, oh, these people really like this guy, Well, there's nothing not to like, There's only upside with Bo. So I hope he stays. And I really appreciate both of you coming on with us today, and welcome back from your trips abroad and also in Atlanta. I don't like Atlanta. I hate going to Atlanta.
Me too.
I get lost every time I go there. It rains every time.
It's so bad.
And I was going to go. I was going for the 4-day weekend. I'm like, all right, I'm not doing anything 4th of July. I'm not going downtown Nashville to see the concerts. There's just too many hundreds of thousands of people. And then I thought twice about it. And I'm like, do I really have to go there every day and see this, the tomahawk chop?
The tomahawk chop and the rain delays.
And navigating anywhere gets you lost.
I was in Atlanta a bunch in 23, and I just remember there was that one game too where I have some friends in Atlanta, some great baseball players actually, Ashton Lansdale and Maggie Miley are both on Team USA, and I got to actually sit down with them for part of the game, and I was like, I'm going to sit there, I'm going to watch with them, it's going to be great. And then the next play is when Pete Alonso got hit in the hand, and I was like, I'm going to go downstairs and deal with this. So I have never had a great experience in Atlanta either. So I was in Corfu, Greece instead.
I'm glad I didn't go, because even though they won 2 of those 4 games, I still would have left the stadium very angry.
Oh, those games. Those games. I all I can do is shake my head. I was sitting there. I think I threw my pen at one point. I'm like, I don't even know.
That was a tough trip for sure. I'm sure Toronto was nice, but Atlanta,
Toronto was great.
Turned the
Big
page.
fan of Toronto, Liz. Good job. Canadian.
Amazing. I'm from Toronto. If anybody doesn't know that, it's one of the best places
All right.
in the world.
Thank you again. And let us all know where to find you guys on in print and radio, TV, and podcasting. So we'll go to Liz first, and Laura, let everybody know where to find you.
You can find me on X at Elizabeth, and Instagram at elizabeth.benn. And then you can find me on SNY on Baseball Night in New York. And then if you have access to Canadian TV, I'm on TSN, often on SportsCenter, and have a couple different hits coming up with them soon.
Oh, nice. You can find me newsday.com/Mets for my Mets coverage, on Twitter at Albanese Laura, my podcast, first time listener, long time caller. And I'm on SNY Analyst sometimes for Baseball Night in New York. I will be on there Thursday. So you can catch me there.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you both so much, and we'll talk to you both soon.
Thank you.
It's always great to have insiders on with us. And even today with Liz Benn, because she was part of that front office. So the insight that she gave us today on the upcoming draft and, of course, the trade deadline, and her being an integral part of the Mets front office for those years, it gave us some true insight. And Laura, of course, is in that clubhouse every day. So having both of them on together is always very informative for everybody here at the show. Also, I want to tell you about Tunnel to Towers. To mark the 4th of July holiday, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation provided 30 mortgage-free homes to some of America's greatest heroes. This includes the families of a Philadelphia police sergeant and a Charlotte County sheriff's sergeant. If a first responder or service member is killed in the line of duty and leaves behind young children, Tunnel to Towers will pay off their mortgage. And if a first responder or veteran is catastrophically injured, the foundation will provide them a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. The 30 homes for Independence Day were delivered to families in 19 different states. And you can help Tunnel to Towers on its mission to do good by donating $11 a month at t2t.org. The Tunnel to Towers Steel Across America tour has completed more than half its stops. Already, people in more than 20 cities have had the chance to see and touch a steel beam recovered from the rubble at Ground Zero. The 21-foot artifact is a way for Tunnel to Towers to ensure that Americans never forget the sacrifice and heroism of 9/11. The steel recently made a stop at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, and it'll next visit San Francisco on July the 10th. Then it'll be displayed at T-Mobile Park in Seattle before the Mariners-Giants game on July the 17th. The tour will conclude at the World Trade Center on 9/11. For more information on the steel and its schedule, go to t2t.org. And it's one of the most dramatic and moving races you'll find anywhere. Registration now open for the Tunnel to Towers Foundation 5K Run and Walk in New York. The event will retrace the heroic steps of New York City firefighter Stephen Siller. On 9/11, Stephen ran through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel to the Twin Towers, where he lost his life saving others. That's where the name Tunnel to Towers came from. The foundation was created in Stephen's memory by his 6 surviving siblings. This year's race will take place on Sunday, September 27th. You could sign up by going to t2t.org. That's t2t.org. We're going to be back with part 4, the final part of this series, looking back at the career of Terry Collins with Laura Albanese. In this final segment, TC and Laura discuss the 2015 and 2016 seasons and Terry's life today living in Florida. Back with that right after this word from Mets utility player Brett Beatty on behalf of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
I'm Mets infielder Brett Beatty. Supporting our military and first responders is very important to me. the mission of the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. They transform the lives of the men and women who protect us and keep us safe. It's probably one of the most important foundations out there. A donation of just $11 can make a big difference. Go to t2t.org for more information on what you can do to help. Let's go Mets, and let's support Tunnel to Towers.
What did you love the most about that season? Because, I mean, Mets fans look back on that season with a lot of affection, obviously.
One of the things that I look back on, and I through the podcast with John Arezzi, I asked Sandy Alderson, what was it that you said about that team that you said, you know what, we're going to go get some help here, because that turned that entire season around.
Right.
We started bringing in, before Cespedes, when we brought in Juan Uribe, Kelly Johnson. These are quality major league players. Juan Uribe's got a World Series ring. You know, Kelly Johnson, I don't know if he was at the Braves when but he was a good player. And so, and then you bring in Addison Reed and Tyler Clippard, and the names kept coming up. And with each name, you'd walk in the locker room, and the other guy's eyes are going like, "Holy cow! Hey, they think we're pretty good."
Yeah.
The front office is saying, "You guys are pretty good here," and so you just saw that, that confidence start to grow in the clubhouse. And then when we got Cespedes, I mean, it just, they said, hey, look, and I go back to Fred, Jeff, and Saul for stepping up, and Sandy for saying, look, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a run.
It's interesting that you say that, the idea that you can actually imbue confidence into a clubhouse just by being like, oh, the front office actually thinks we can do this.
That's right. And I'm telling you, this game's about confidence. I don't care what your role is on a team. If you believe in yourself, and when you get hot, that's why I said I don't need any numbers to tell me when to play a guy and when not to play a guy. When they get hot, they're playing.
Daniel Murphy,
Jay Bruce, David Wright. I mean,
Lucas Duda had some good.
Lucas Duda, another great name. When they're swinging the bats good, they're playing. I don't care who's on that mound; they think they can hit them.
Yeah.
And so, and that's that's what the game's about. And you bring that into the entire lineup, the entire clubhouse, where there's 25 guys or 26 guys in there that say, hey, we're good enough to win. And that's what I'm telling you. Some of those comeback games, I swear to God, Laura, you'd sit on the bench and you'd look down that bench and you'd say, we're going to win this game. Yeah. We might be behind by 5 runs, and we're going to win this game.
Do you see that in teams these days? Like, do you ever get a moment, like even the 2024 Mets, where we're just like, oh, they're down, but maybe they can kind of like come back because of the guys.
Because they know they can.
Yeah.
So they don't get all caught up and we're losing again. They say, hey, look, let's keep doing what we've been doing. Let's get good pitches to hit. Let's put good swings on the ball. Let's make quality pitches, and it all ends up paying off.
You had some pretty phenomenal pitchers too, and they were obviously very young. What was it like peak Matt Harvey? And then, hey, this DeGrom kid is pretty good.
Well, obviously when I had Jake, he didn't throw hundreds, but he was really good because he pitched. I remember days where he didn't, game 5. I mean, all he kept doing was making pitches. He didn't get frustrated because he didn't have his best stuff. He made quality pitches. He wasn't afraid to miss off the plate because he just said, well, I got to throw this down the middle because my command's not very. He kept making pitches. Before Matt got hurt, I don't know if there was a better pitcher in the game.
Really?
I mean, this guy took the mound, and I mean, you're talking about a guy who attacked people and tremendous guy and great stuff. And so, then we call up a young guy named Noah Syndergaard, who sat on the bench and asked all the right questions. So Jake would be pitching, and he'd throw a pitch, and Noah would say to Dan Worth and the pitching coach, so should I throw my slider in that situation? Ask all the right questions. So when he took the mound, he was ready.
Yeah.
And even though he had the great arm, but again, we taught him to get, Dan taught him the two-seam fastball to get easier outs. So instead of trying to strike somebody out on 7 pitches, you got him out on 3. So all of a sudden, instead of going 5 innings, he's going 7 and 8 innings now. Still throwing 100.
Still throwing 100.
Steven Matz, I mean, another guy, brought him up, good command. I mean, there was time, and I used to leave my apartment in Long Island City and going to the ballpark, and my thoughts were, all right, we're facing Gio Gonzalez tonight from the Nationals. I got to figure out how to score 3 runs tonight because they're not scoring 3. It's a pretty good feeling.
That's a pretty good feeling. I mean, it did feel like you had this great confluence of just like hard workers and actual like thinkers, like guys who pitched.
They competed against each other. I mean, you got 5 of the best young pitchers in baseball, and you know what? Matt throws a 2-hitter or a 3-hitter. Jake wants to throw a 2-hitter. You know what I mean? That's, and that inner competitiveness. And if you saw it, as you know, there was a time when Jake would throw a sideline, and the other 3 guys were sitting. They're all out there watching him throw his sides. So now they know what he's doing mechanically, and so during a game in house, they can hey, look, you're starting to get out front, or you're different things because they paid attention.
It is, but it's interesting. You said before that sometimes teams take on the manager's personality a little bit. It did feel like that 2015 took on your personality.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
In terms of intensity.
They about the intensity, yeah. And I'll tell you, that run in September, unbelievable. And when we got into playoffs, we're playing a pretty Dodger team. We're pretty good. Yeah. And that when we won that first game, I said, I think we're gonna win this playoff. And I remember after, it was pretty fun. We split in LA. We go to New York. We win the first game. And I'm in the outfield the day before, or on that game, on game 3, and I, because my time with the Dodgers, I was the farm director when we signed Clayton Kershaw. So I'm talking to Clayton, and I said, "You pitching tomorrow?" And he goes, "Oh, they haven't told me yet." I said, "What are you talking about? You're pitching tomorrow."
Clayton Kershaw.
Of course you're going to be pitching tomorrow. So, and those are, again, that was, and I said, we got to get ready for this. Well, it's just, again, and of course Murph was red hot, but it all starts with, we held him down. Jake came in, pitches great. Noah comes in, strikes out Justin Turner. I got asked DiBiase to go out there for 2 innings, probably for the first time all year. Yeah. And those are what they did. They just stepped up. They took what was asked of them, and they ran with it.
What was that team like after the Ruben Tejada injury? How did you react?
Angry.
Yeah.
They were angry. Yeah, it was. But again, it was. There are situations, and you hear it today, Laura, all the time. Hey, it's next man up.
Yeah.
So when Ruben got hurt, Wilmer got to step up, pal, and did. And because that's, and again, when that confidence, and they have to have confidence in themselves, but their teammates help them.
Yeah.
Hey, look, hey, you're the perfect guy for this situation.
That was a very memorable team. I think that's right. Wilmer Flores almost got traded and didn't come back. Jacob deGrom, all these other things. I mean, so when you look back at your career, I mean, do you feel like that was the pinnacle, 2015?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's all of, again, that's, like I said, that's what you play for.
Yeah.
And to get that opportunity to go out there, and and I will tell you what, the 2016 team, Murph was gone, David was hurt. That team, when that run we made at the end of the year to get into the wild card, was incredible.
Yeah.
We got performances out of guys that we didn't expect. Even Asdrubal Cabrera, I know he hit the home run, but if people forgot, this guy played on a bad knee all year. Yeah. Never complained. Never said anything. Just showed up and played, and I thought that run was really impressive.
That was pretty incredible. I do want to ask you this: you've been all around baseball. You're the Forrest Gump of baseball, basically, all over the place. In terms of favorite, do you have any memorabilia? Do you have stuff that you hold on to that you care about?
Well, I used to have a lot. I don't anymore. I kept some stuff that's very important to me. I when I was in college, we won a national championship, and I have the bat I used. Of that, I've kept that. Of course, my sisters gave me a frame of my father, who played softball. So they framed his glove, which, no laces in the fingers and just a little bitty pocket. Mm-hmm. And they won the national championship. So they have in this, what are they called? Shadow boxes is his ring, his glove, and a picture of him making a play. And so that's something I've kept. I've got my championship ring from the Mets. I have got an award after 2015. There's Dennis Gilbert had a thing that and so I got the Tom Lasorda Manager of the Year award and Tommy gave it to me. And so those are just a few things I've kept
nice.
that, you know.
How much of your career was your dad able to experience?
Well, he died. He passed away in 2015, so he didn't get to see the World Series. But he was there for my opening game in Houston. There for my opening game in Anaheim. Did not come to New York, but and he was in his 90s then. So, but he, you know, he was always there, and you know, give me a call. Hey, Bo, how you doing? You know,
yeah,
like, good game last night, and I knew he didn't watch the whole game. But I think he got a recap from my sisters in the morning. So,
so when did he pass away in 2015?
In February.
In February, so before the season started. How difficult was that going into a season having lost your dad?
Well, it was hard. It's pretty fun. You know, when we swept the Cubs, the game we swept on October 21st, I think it was October 20, would have been my mother and father's 52nd or 53rd wedding anniversary on that night. And they had both passed away, and I knew that was, you know, they were there. And so that stuff was big. But, you know, I got to tell my father how much he meant to me before he passed away. And so I was okay.
Yeah.
Because I knew that, you know, that he knew how I felt and how much, you know, that he had done for me growing up. I remember, you know, one morning when I was a senior in high school, I got up on a Saturday morning, I walked upstairs, and there's a brand new Wilson glove on the table. You know, I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
Never asked for it, and there it was.
He must have been so proud.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. Yeah.
That's lovely. I think that's all I have, unless there's anything else you think I should bring up.
I got nothing else.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time. Your career is fascinating, and I love hearing these stories. And
well, I've had a great life, and you know, I've told everybody I don't have to apologize for anything. You know, I worked hard, and it paid off in the long run, and I've got to be in this situation where, you know, I've got to know you, John, Marsh, everybody else. You know, I've got to meet some of the greatest players that have ever played the game, call them friends. I'm a pretty lucky guy from a little bitty town who, you know, at one time, you know, I tell the story about my mother told my father one day that one of the kids I played with's mother called and said that I couldn't play with her son anymore because I played too hard. So my mother told my dad, "You're going to have to talk to Terry." My dad said, "I will." And she said, "What are you going to tell him?" He said, "I'm going to tell him not to play with that kid anymore." Yeah. But don't change the way you go about your job.
I bet you he's not a major league manager, so there you go. Awesome. Thank you, Terry.
You bet.
That was a great 4-part series that we had here at the Terry Collins Show, and look for that entire interview in its entirety that we'll be putting up soon on our YouTube channel. And now we're going to bring you another Never Forget story, remembering the 25th anniversary of 9/11 and those in the New York baseball community who will indeed never forget that tragedy. Here is Yankee announcer Susan Waldman, remembering the first game back at the stadium after the 9/11 attacks and the empty seats that memorialized those who had been lost on that fateful day. And after that, a story about Elizabeth Harris, widow of U.S. Navy Commander Charles Alfonso Harris, on how Tunnel to Towers changed her life after the loss of her husband. Let's go to those stories right now.
The first day back at Yankee Stadium was pretty traumatizing because all of a sudden you looked out. I remember looking out the window of the booth and seeing empty seats, and on the empty seats were cans of beer, somebody's sweatshirt, flowers, cookies that someone used to bake, someone else baked them and brought them there, and they were all people who were gone, just gone. If you look down, the first time I saw 4 tickets, 4 people that should have been together, but there were 3. And on one of the seats was a 6-pack of beer. And then you looked around, and it was everywhere. It was just everywhere. In every section, one section had flowers, so obviously someone's wife was in the building. Some had police things, and there was a cop that was missing, and there were cops that you saw that lost their partners. But it was everywhere. It was eerie, but it was so beautiful. I just won't ever forget that, because people wanted them to be there when they came back to Yankee Stadium, because no matter what's happened to us, we're better than this. And it's really something.
After Charles passed, my biggest fear was, I think, just the unknown. But, you know, we went from 2 incomes to not even 1 at the time, because we had just moved to Florida. I wasn't working. Annika was 11 at the time, and Quinn was 6. Annika is built just like him. Quinn is completely extroverted and outgoing like him. And I think for Annika, when her dad died, she was really concerned about how the bills were going to get paid. And she started calling family members, asking if there were any jobs or work that she could do for money to help pay the bills. My dad actually is the one that told me about Tunnel to Towers. I remember the phone call when Laura from Tunnel to Towers called to tell me that my mortgage was being paid off. I stopped breathing, I think, because she was like, "Are you still there?" And I just started sobbing. And I said, "Yeah, I'm still here." Tunnel to Towers paying off my mortgage meant stability. Charles loved serving his country. He loved everything about the Navy. On May 6th of 2021, he assumed command of the USS Howard. On July 28th of 2021, he was pulled off the ship for medical concerns, and we found out that he had stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma, which is gallbladder cancer. They moved us to hospice, and he and I lived in that hospice room together for 5 days until he took his last breath. So perfectly healthy on May 6th and gone by August 28th. Even though he's not with us, he's very present in our lives. Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Let us do good.
We will have more heartwarming stories from the Tunnel to Towers Foundation on next week's show. And it has been another busy week for our friends at Coachs Collectibles. They are your source for guaranteed 100% authentic pieces of Mets signed memorabilia. 10% of all sales generated here at CoachesCollectiblesNewYork.com go to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. It's their way of helping T2T with their association with our show. Just use the TC Show promo code when checking out their site, CoachesCollectiblesNewYork.com, and get free shipping as well. And some of the bright spots for the Mets all season have come from their rookie stars, Carson Benn, A.J. Ewing, and Nolan McLean. And this week, you can pick up a signed baseball from both McLean and Benn, fully authenticated in a 2-ball Mets logo display case. Both balls in the case are just $329, shipped directly to you. And there is a limited supply of signed and framed 11x14 Nolan McLean photos, yours for just $239 shipped. And listen to this, Met fans, just booked the first ever public appearance and signing of Mets rookie sensation A.J. Ewing. That'll take place on Thursday, July the 23rd, beginning at 6:30 p.m. at LaFleur Event Space, 1081 Hempstead Turnpike in Franklin Square, Long Island. Mail-ins for this signing are also available as well if you can't be there in person. Go to CoachesCollectiblesNewYork.com to purchase tickets or to learn more. Once again, that's CoachesCollectiblesNewYork.com. And before we go, we want to announce that we've booked member of the 2026 Hall of Fame class and upcoming Mets Hall of Famer Carlos Beltran to appear right here on the show with Terry. Look for that episode in just 2 weeks. And next week, returning to us, Howard Johnson has a couple of announcements he wants to make. And of course, Howard will be part of that August 1st, 40th anniversary celebration of the 1986 World Championship Mets. So look for Hojo here on the show next week. You can follow the Terry Collins Show on Facebook, Instagram, and on X. You could listen to us on all podcast platforms, and you could subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every full episode since the debut of the show in 2024 is there, and we release highlights from each show there after every episode. Subscribe now by going to youtube.com/The Terry Collins Show. That's going to wrap up this edition of the show. Thanks to our creative director, Marsh, and to our researcher, Dominic DiBiase. For Terry Collins, this is John Arezzi. Thanks for joining us, and have a great week, everyone.